Evelyn Monroe had just raised her hand to point out a new running route on the play diagram when Coach Sterling snatched the board from her and threw it to the ground. "That's enough. This is football, not a statistics class. And you, Monroe, you shouldn't have been here in the first place." His voice didn't need a microphone. It was loud enough for all 70,000 spectators to hear. Loud enough for the cameras to capture her face the exact moment she was publicly shamed. And Evelyn stood still. She didn't bow her head. She didn't take a step back. She simply stood there. Inside her, something cracked, not in flames, but in sharp, cold silence. She looked down at the scattered diagrams, handwritten notes in purple ink, the tactical codes she had spent the past 3 weeks analyzing on her own. All of it now lying at the feet of laughing male coaches. Evelyn bent down and picked up each sheet. Her hands didn't tremble, but her chest tightened, as if someone was squeezing the heart of a woman who had once lived for this sport. She had once sworn never to return to the spotlight. She thought she could live forever in the shadows, unnoticed, forgotten. But in that moment, humiliated before the entire nation, Evelyn no longer wanted to hide, not to prove she was right, but to make the world see her one last time for exactly who she really was. Someone who had once changed the entire game. And tonight, she was going to do it again. 15 years ago, no one called her Ms. Monroe. They called her the young strategist who raised Empire State University from the ashes. Back then, Evelyn Monroe was only 24, holding 2 PhDs, one in behavioral statistics, the other in sports psychology. And instead of accepting offers from top sports analytics firms, she chose a path no one dared to take, walking straight into a boardroom full of men in suits and challenging the entire foundation of their outdated tactical system. And she was right. The dynamic defense system, able to adjust in real time to the subtlest cues from the offense, was her brainchild. It was a mathematical equation that blended human instinct with competitive intuition. The only person who truly saw her for who she was head coach Nathaniel Harrington, a living legend. He once stood before hundreds of reporters and said, "I didn't hire Evelyn because she's a woman. I hired her because she sees things I haven't seen in 30 years of doing this job." Under his mentorship, Evelyn was given the freedom to attempt what the football world had never dared to try. And in the national championship game with the team on the brink of defeat and only 2 minutes left on the clock, it was she, no one else, who called for a strategy that went against every page in the traditional playbook. And it worked. A historic interception. That night in a stadium packed to the brim, Coach Harrington handed her the genuine leather playbook. His hands trembled as he said, "You're the one who drew the path to this victory. It belongs to you." She once believed she had opened a new era. She once thought that from then on, girls who loved strategy would no longer be treated like a joke. She once thought that if you were good enough, you would be recognized. She was wrong. At first, the betrayal came softly, quietly. A meeting she was accidentally left out of. A data file that suddenly went missing. An article in Sports View magazine praises the tactical revolution at Empire State, but the featured image was Mark Denton, Evelyn's former tactical assistant, with the caption, "The architect of modern defensive strategy." Her name appeared in just one line, Evelyn Monroe, supporting statistical analyst. Not a single word about the system she designed. Not a hint of credit. When Evelyn confronted Denton, he smiled without hesitation. "You can be angry," he said, "but the truth is, no one believes a woman created that. I'm helping you. Thanks to me, your idea is being accepted." She no longer had a place to speak. Coach Harrington, the only one who ever defended her, was sitting at his wife's hospital bedside at the time. When Evelyn brought the evidence, the data logs, the original handwritten drafts, to the dean's office, they looked at her with exhausted eyes. "Evelyn, it's best to let this go." And then Mrs. Harrington passed away. 3 months later, Coach Harrington suffered a heart attack and didn't survive. The last person who believed in her was gone. At the funeral, Evelyn stood alone. As for Denton, he was surrounded by the arms of the new coaching staff, beaming, whispering to someone beside him, "Ohio State's offering me a defensive coordinator position. They want me to bring the Empire system over." That night, in an apartment with no lights left, Evelyn received an email. "Due to structural changes, your position at Empire State University will be terminated." Attached was an NDA contract. "All strategies developed during your employment are considered proprietary assets of the university," along with an unspoken warning, "If you want a future in this field, stay silent." But her career had disappeared long before that. After every shove, every slammed door, Evelyn didn't leave the world of football. She withdrew into it, like someone living anonymously inside her own home. Under a vague title, Tactical Support Specialist at St. Augustine Private High School, she was given a tiny windowless room that used to be an equipment closet. The nameplate taped outside read simply, "E. Monroe, Tech Support." No one asked who she was. No one recognized the name that once appeared on national broadcasts. The young coaches treated her like a talking printer. "Monroe, can you print out the play sheets for me? Can you type up the new strategy from, Coach Denton?" She retyped the very tactics she had once created, now renamed after someone else. Each afternoon, Evelyn stood quietly, watching students train on the field, executing with precision the core principles of dynamic defense she had designed. They called it the Denton system. They even held coaching seminars on it. Sometimes she'd hear a student say, "Denton's strategy really changed the game." She didn't correct them. She didn't smile. She didn't react. She just took notes silently each time a student missed a timing cue. Then she wrote down how to fix it and tucked it into her desk drawer. No one read it. No one asked. At night, she opened that drawer. Inside was the old leather playbook, now worn at the edges, the cover peeling. The gold-embossed words, "You changed the game," were now faded into ghostly strokes. She flipped to a page, saw her own handwriting, saw a familiar diagram, saw a part of the person she used to be. And then she closed. The book turned off the lights and went on living as if she had never existed. It was a Thursday afternoon. The field was slowly emptying. Coach Sterling's whistle echoed in rhythm with the sound of running cleats and the wind rustling through the empty bleachers. Evelyn was packing up her notes, getting ready to leave the office like she did every day. Then the door opened softly. Standing there was Blake Donovan Team, captain, star quarterback, straight A, student, the one the media called the nation's golden hope. He glanced around, then lowered his voice, almost hesitating. "Miss Monroe, I was re-watching the Westbridge High tape. Something doesn't feel right. I don't think I fully understand it." She froze for a moment. For the first time in years, someone was asking her about strategy with genuine curiosity, not pity, not defensiveness, just a real need for her mind. She didn't say much, just pulled the laptop toward the center of the table and opened the game footage. They sat across from each other. She pointed to the smallest details. "See the cornerback 3 steps back? That's man coverage. 2 steps, that's zone. Watch the safety's shoulder before the snap. Tilted slightly left, they're prepping a blitz on the strong side." Blake's eyes lit up. If we run a switch route or motion at the right moment, they won't have time to adjust. We could force them into making a mistake. She nodded slightly. No praise, no smile, but inside, something stirred a feeling she hadn't known in a very long time: anticipation. A few moments of silence passed. Then Blake asked, his voice unable to hide what he truly meant. "Why don't you say anything during the games? You understand things better than anyone. All of us. We know that." Evelyn looked him straight in the eyes. There was no blame in her gaze, no resentment, just a tiredness that had been there too long. "If I spoke, do you think they'd listen?" Blake looked down. Then, as if he couldn't avoid the truth any longer, he said no. "But if you don't speak, they'll lose." It wasn't encouragement. It was a fact. Raw, simple, and so true it hurt. After he left, Evelyn stared at her laptop screen. Her hand slowly reached for the drawer. This time she didn't just look at the playbook. She opened it, and for the first time, she began to write again. That night, in a small windowless room, Evelyn Monroe sat alone. Out in the hallway, everyone else had left. The desk lamp was the only light still glowing, illuminating both the room and the past that lived inside her. On her computer screen, a half-written resignation letter blinked silently. "Dear Board of Directors, I believe my time contributing to this team has come to an end." The sentence hung in the air, unfinished, suspended, abandoned, much like she had been. But this time, she didn't continue writing words of surrender. Evelyn deleted the entire message. She took a deep breath, slowly opened her drawer, pulled out the worn leather playbook, turned to the last blank page, and began to write again. Not for recognition, not for credit, but to feel just once more truly alive inside the game she once loved more than fame itself. That night, her fingers flew across the keyboard like the very current of strategy running through her veins, the same veins that once earned her the title, the Golden Girl of Empire State University. She broke down the film clip by clip, formation by formation. She studied every defensive habit of their upcoming opponent. From grainy bleacher angles, she read how the cornerback shifted his weight, how the quarterback looked off by one beat before throwing, how the safety flinched too early before every blitz. Every tiny tendency was dissected, noted, and transformed into strategy, not with guesswork, but with logic, with statistics, and with the ruthless precision of someone who understood football like her own heartbeat. For 7 straight hours, she didn't eat, didn't rest. She just wrote like she was reclaiming the voice that had been stolen from her. As dawn crept through the misty windows of the school stadium, she placed the final cover on a 47-page playbook. And this time, unlike 15 years ago, she typed her name in bold letters across the top of the document: Championship Strategy, Evelyn Monroe. No more hiding, no more silence, even if it got thrown to the ground again, even if she was mocked one more time. This morning, she wouldn't walk into the championship game as a shadow. She would walk in as the woman finally ready to reclaim what had always been hers. The stadium was ablaze. Tens of thousands roared as the team stormed the field. Meanwhile, Evelyn Monroe stood quietly at the back of the coaching line, clipboard clutched tightly in her hands, as always, her face unreadable, but inside, every cell in her body was burning. The first half unfolded exactly as she had predicted. Head coach Sterling's offensive scheme was completely exposed. The opposing team, with a defense as solid as concrete and an uncanny ability to read plays, had built a 21-point lead. The locker room at halftime was chaos. Sterling shouted at the strategy board, drawing and redrawing useless routes as if the sheer volume of his voice could salvage a strategy that was long outdated. His assistants sat with their heads down, nodding like pre-programmed puppets. The players exchanged glances, disillusioned, lost. And then no one called her. No one invited her. No one gave a sign. Evelyn stepped forward and placed the 47-page game plan in the center of the table. She didn't say a word, didn't beg for attention. It was the silence of someone who knew she was right. Blake Donovan was the first to reach for it. Then the defensive captain. Then the quarterback. Within 2 minutes, the locker room split into two worlds, one filled with Sterling's screams and the other filled with the sound of pages turning as Evelyn's handwritten strategies were read aloud like ancient secrets awakened from a 15-year slumber. Sterling snapped, yelling in Blake's face, "You're really going to listen to her, someone who's never even played pro ball?" But Blake didn't flinch. He looked his coach straight in the eye and said, "We've lost 3 straight quarters because we refused to listen to her. I'm choosing to try this time." Nods rippled across the room. Sterling froze. For the first time he realized he was alone in his own locker room. And reluctantly, he nodded. "Fine, try it. But if we lose, it's on her." She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Because right after that, the game turned. As if the universe had finally handed the controller back to the rightful player. The defense moved exactly as Evelyn had mapped out. The cornerbacks read the offense from every footfall. The linebackers anticipated throws. The routes opened up precisely where she had marked their weakness. 1 point at a time, the team closed the gap. And when the stadium exploded in a frenzy as the team tied the game, the crowd began to notice. During every timeout, the players weren't running to Sterling. They were going to her. Evelyn Monroe, still standing in her usual spot at the edge of the sideline. But this time, every eye was on her, not as a shadow, not as a forgotten name, but as the woman who had rewritten the entire chessboard. In silence, just over a minute remained. The score was tied, and Westbridge, the strongest team in the state, was pushing hard. Evelyn didn't flinch. She stood at the end of the sideline, arms around her clipboard, eyes locked on every movement, like she was watching the final act of a play she had written herself. Sterling was flustered, barking into the headset, switching calls, panicking, but no player was really listening to him anymore. And then, without being asked, Evelyn stepped right up to the defensive huddle. Cover 3 shell. Middle robber. Johnson and Murphy drop deep. Lewis sits underneath. Don't follow their eyes, follow their feet. Her voice was clear, firm. No permission sought, no approval needed. The players nodded. Not a single one looked back at Sterling. They looked only at Evelyn, the girl who was once called the clipboard assistant, the one they used to send to make photocopies, now giving the final order for the play that would decide the championship. The game resumed. The ball was thrown, a desperate Hail Mary, soaring high and long like fate itself was putting them to the test. But the defense moved exactly as Evelyn had diagrammed at 3 a.m. the night before. Lewis leapt at the perfect moment, swatted the ball to the ground, surrounded by 3 teammates. Time expired. Game over. And the stadium erupted. Sterling rushed forward, expecting the congratulations, but the players didn't run to him. They ran to the far sideline. They lifted Evelyn Monroe onto their shoulders. "Coach Monroe, Coach Monroe." The name roared from the throats of players who once wouldn't meet her eyes. The press swarmed in. Cameras pointed straight at the only woman on that sideline. Amid the barrage of questions, a young reporter shouted, "How does it feel to have single-handedly rewritten the biggest game in high school history?" Evelyn didn't answer right away. She looked around at the eyes of Blake, of Lewis, of students who didn't need convincing to believe in her. She saw Sterling standing alone in the corner, tasting isolation for the first time. And then she looked up at the stands filled with thousands of people, applauding someone they once never even noticed. Evelyn smiled softly, not because of the win, but because for the first time in 15 years, she didn't have to stay silent anymore. Some victories aren't found on the scoreboard they live in the moment you make the world say your name correctly again. Evelyn Monroe didn't seek revenge. She didn't need to shout to be believed. All she needed was one moment to see the right thing happen and be recognized for it. This story isn't just about a football game. It's about every room where the truth is ignored because of bias. Every brilliant person is pushed to the sidelines simply because they don't fit the mold. The greatest lesson here is this quiet conviction is powerful enough to shift an entire system if you have the courage to stand firm in who you are. Personally, I believe that real value never has to beg for attention. It only needs to be held with patience, and when the time is right, the whole world will see it, and no one can take that truth away. If this story moved, you leave a comment and share your thoughts. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Toch Story, where the forgotten get to speak and stories that once felt small carry the power to change how we see the world. Because some people don't need to stand out to be great. They just need to be right.